All right, guys. So we're doing today's lesson is on finding domain and range for a continuous function. Okay, and so let me go back to the beginning really quick. Okay, this is from yesterday. Quick review. I'll define domain and range for a discrete function. So remember, domain are the x values or the x coordinates. So I'm going to try and identify the x coordinates for my domain. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a line from each point to the x-axis to figure out the x coordinate. So, and again, we always start from the left. So this is my leftmost point. So that's -3. Oops, wrong side. Let's go back up for a second. -3. This one's on the x-axis, so that's -2. The next one, I go down, that's 1. The next one here, I go up, that's 2. And this one here is 5. So my domain is going to be, starting from left to right, all the x values, right, are going to be -3, -2, 1, 2, and 5. So that's my domain right there. And for my range now, I'm going to start at the lowest point. The lowest point. See, here we go. Lowest point is this one, and the y value now is -5. You see, I'll do that. I always go to the y-axis when I'm trying to find a range. The next point up is this one here, and that is 0. This one here, the y value is 1, and also for this one, the y value is 1. So I have two ones, and this one is 4. So for the range now, it's going to be -5. 0. Now I have two ones, but I want to write it once. 1 and 4. So that's my range right there. Okay. All right. So that was a refresher from yesterday's lesson. Now let's look at finding domain and range for a continuous functions. And so a continuous function has a graph with a single continuous line, single continuous line, right? This means that the values are points that are connected. They are connected. And so here, these are our continuous functions, all right? And over here, we have discrete dots, points on the graph. So make sure you understand the difference. All right, just like yesterday, we said domain refers to the set of all possible input values, and those are going to be your x values, right? So those are going to be your x coordinates or your x values. Then range refers to the set of all possible output values, and those are going to be your y values. All right. Now, for a continuous function, we use some symbols, and the first one is you'll see a closed circle and an open circle. A closed circle just means that the endpoint is included in the domain, while an open circle means that an endpoint is not included in the domain. So for instance, this graph right here, right, it starts at 3, -3 on the x-axis, all right? And we can say it ends at 3 on the right. So the closed circle means that when I write my domain, -3, it is part of the domain. However, on the other end, this 3 right here, because it's an open circle, the 3, even though I'm going to write it in a domain, it is not part domain. And let me explain this. So here is 2, right? So the line for the x value, right? The line has 2.5 as a value, 2.6, oops, 2.6 as an x value, 2.7, all the way up to 2.9. Now, the line is going to approach 3, but never gets to 3. So the x value for this line right here is going to be, it's going to get 2.999999, right? But it never gets to 3. So that's what the open circle means, that the 3 is not part of the domain, all right? And then for closed circle, we use these symbols, greater than and equal to, or less than and equal to, all right? And for an open circle, we use greater than or less than. And so let's work this. Let's do some examples. Okay, let's look at this graph right here, and we're gonna try find the domain for it. So remember domain, right? We start on the left side of the graph. So here we go. On the left side, ask yourself now, what is the x value for where this graph starts at? All right, so the graph starts right here. So if I want to find the x value for this graph right here, I come down to the line, and that is -3. All right, 1, 2, 3, -3. And so the domain starts at -3. Now let's see on the other side where the graph ends. All right, and so if I go over to the right side, right here, I come down to the x-axis. That's going to be 1, 1, 2, 3. So it um, ends at 3. Okay. Now, as I said in class, all right, to show that this -3 is a part domain, we can use what's called the square bracket. And to show that this 3 is not part of domain, right, we can use the curve bracket. However, in Algebra 1 in this class, right, that's not how we're going to write the domain, though. So this is how we're going to write the domain, okay? You'll see this method, this way of writing domain in textbooks, probably in higher math. But in Algebra 1 here, right, we're going to write it this way. So -3 is on the right, on the left, all right? That's where the graph starts at. Now look at here. At -3, right, there's a closed circle right here. For a closed circle, we're going to use the less than or equal to sign. We're going to use this one here. And so I'm going to put a less than or equal to. This is just the same as the closed bracket. We just use less than or equal to. On the right side now, we know we're going to have a 3. It's an open circle, so I'm going to use the less than symbol. Less than symbol. And that's just the same as the curve bracket. Now, because we're talking about domain, we just put the X in the middle. All right, and that's domain. Now, let's look at the range now. Now, the range now, remember, we start at the lowest point of the graph. And so if you look here, the lowest point of the graph is going to be this point right here. So if I come across, right, to the y-axis, that's going to be 2. That's going to be 2 right there. And then I go to the highest point of the graph, the line, right? That's this point right here. I come across to the y-axis, and that is going to be 3. Now, for the 3, because it's a closed circle, I'm going to use less than or equal to. For the lowest point, it's an open circle, so I'm going to use a less than next to the 2. And of course, I put a y in the middle. All right? Let's try some more examples. All right, let's look at, okay, before I get to 7, let's look at let's do 2 and 3 first, all right? So let me zoom in just a little bit, so a little bigger. Let's go to 200. Yeah, let's do 200, okay? So we're going to do number 2 first. Oops, number 2, okay. So let's find the domain. So remember, domain, we're going to start on the left side of the graph. And you can see that this is where the graph starts at. If I go up, right, that's going to be -5. So my graph is going to start at -5. But that's an open circle. And remember now, open circle, we're going to use, if you can look at your notes, right, we're going to use can I find it? We're going to use the less than symbol. Open circle, less than. And so let me go back. Oh, okay, and so for my domain now, I'm gonna put the less than right there. Now let's see where the graph ends now. Let's go over to where the graph ends. I come down to the x-axis, that's 2. So I'm gonna have a 2 on the right. Now this is a closed circle. So I'm gonna use a less than or equal to, and I put my x in the middle for domain. Okay. Now let's look at the range now. Remember the range now, we're going to start at the lowest point of the graph. And so the lowest point is this point right here. Let me go over to, always go to the y-axis for the range, all right? I go over to the y-axis, that's going to be a -2. And because this is an open circle, I'm going to use my less than. Then I'm going to go to the highest point of the graph. That's right here. And I go over to the y-axis, that's 5. And so I'm going to put 5 on the right side. Now, because this is a closed circle right here, right? I'm going to put my less than or equal to. So that's my domain, all right? And as you can see, my y-intercept is 0, 3 right there, okay? All right, let's try number 2. I want you guys, guys can pause the video, try number 1, and come back and check your answer, all right? Okay, domain, again, I'm going to start on the left side where the graph starts at. And so highlighter, if you notice now, this is where the graph starts at. If I go up, that's going to be -3, right? 1, 2, 3. So that's going to be -3. And this is an open circle, so therefore I'm going to use less than. Let's go to the right side and see where the graph ends. That's right here. I come down to the x-axis, and that is a 4. So that's going to be a 4 here. But again, this is an open circle, right? An open circle, so I'm going to use less than. And I put my x in the middle. All right. Now for the range, I'm going to start with the lowest point of the graph, and that's, again, here. I go across. No, for the range, I'm going to the y-axis. And that's going to be a -1. So that's going to give me a -1 here. And because this is an open circle, I'm going to put a less than. For the highest point of the graph now, let's go up here. Remember now, so that's my highest point on the graph. Now, again, for the range, I have to go to the y-axis, right? And that is 4. So I put a 4 there. And then because it's open circle, I'm going to use my less than. And of course, I put my y in the middle. And of course, the y-intercept is 0, 1. All right, guys? That's 1 and 2. Let me see now. Now, I decided to do the one with the arrow next. All right, so let me go back down and find that one. Uh, where's that one? Is it this one here? No. No. Where's this right here? Okay, so let me make this bigger now. View, zoom, zoom, go to 200. Now, we mentioned that a closed circle, right? We use the less than or equal or the greater than equal to. Open circle, we use a less than or greater than. Now, sometimes we'll see the graph in arrows. And an arrow just means that the graph never stops. Well, it stops right here on the graph, but I can't keep on drawing a huge graph, all right? So let's look at this graph right here. If I'm going to find domain, all right, I'm going to start on my left side. And you would think, right, the graph would start right here. This is what a lot of kids think. They say, oh, the graph starts right here. So it's going to be, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They say -5. All right. But no, that's not quite right. The arrow just means that the graph never stops. So if we look at it now, all right, if we keep on drawing this line right here, it goes all the way. It just keeps on going. And so on my x-axis right here, right, this will be -6, then -7, and we can go all the way to -1,000, -1,000,000. So really, the graph never has a starting point. It just keeps on going, and so um, we call that negative infinity. All right. And on the right side now, you would think the graph ends right here, but no. Think of it now. The arrow just means that the graph keeps on going. This is my x-axis right here. All right. So it goes all the way to positive infinity. So the graph goes to positive infinity. And so for infinity, we use these symbols right here. We use a less than symbol for infinity. All right. So we use less than right there and less than right there, and I put my x in the middle. All right. And the range is the same thing too. The range is the same thing. Okay. You would think this is. You would think the lowest point on the graph is right here, and I go across, right? But that's not quite accurate. Again, think of it. Right? The line keeps on going that way. This is the y-axis, right? Keeps on going down this way. So really, um, this could be negative 1,000, negative 1 million. And so we say the graph goes all the way down to negative infinity. All right, that's the range. And same thing on the other side, right? The graph keeps on going up, and so the y value, right, is going to be positive infinity. And again, we use less than and less than with both infinities and put a y in the middle. So whenever you have a graph in the future, if you see a graph, right, with both arrows at the end, you know your domain and range is negative infinity to positive infinity, right? We're gonna skip the slope on the equation for this one. Okay. Let's see what's next. We did number three. Now, number three, guys, I think I did a good job on this one in class. All right. What's going on here? All right, here we go. All right. Domain. Again, I'm going to start. Oops. Domain, I'm going to start on the left side of the graph. I'm going to start on the left side of the graph. And so the graph starts right here. So that's going to be negative 4, right? Put up negative 4 right there. And on the right side, the graph ends. You can say the graph ends. Where's my highlighter? Right here. And that's going to be 4. And so I'm going to have 4 here. Now, of course, both ends is a closed circle. So I'm going to end up using less than or equal to here, and then less than or equal here. And of course, I put my x in the middle. Now, for the range, remember, range, I'm going to start where? The lowest point on the graph. That's where I'm going to start. And the lowest point is negative 5. So I'm going to have a negative 5 here. And of course, this is a closed circle, so I'm going to use less than or equal to. Now, the highest point on the graph, where's the highest point? It's right here. It's right here is the highest point, and that is 2. All right, and so I'm going to have a 2 there. And again, now it's a solid line, so we treat a solid line just like a closed circle. We use a less than or equal to, and I put my y in the middle. Okay. So you can see now that the domain, the range, right, is from negative 5 to 3. That's the domain right there. Or that's the height of the graph. Okay. All right. Let's look at this one over here on the right. What number is that? That is number 4. Again, for the range, I'm going to start, for the range, I'll just go away, highlighter. For the range, I'm sorry, for the domain, I'm going to start on the left side of the graph, and I want to see what x value the graph starts at. Usually the graph starts right here, which is a negative 4. All right, that's a negative 4 right there. And of course, you can see that's a closed circle, so I'm going to use less than or equal to. On the right side now, where does graph ends? Now, this graph has an arrow, and you want to assume that it ends at 7. No, 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 no. It doesn't end at 7. An arrow means that it just keeps on going, right? So that's going to be positive infinity. And because it's positive infinity, we're going to use a less than symbol. Remember, for infinity, we use a less than symbol. And then for domain, I'm going to put the x in the middle. Put the x in the middle. Okay. All right. Another way of writing this, right? I can say that since all the x values for this domain are going this way, right? There's none on this side over here. There's none. All the x values are greater than 4. I can say that my domain is x is greater than equal to -4. All right? That's another way of writing it. So all the x values go from here all the way to infinity. Right? And the range now, let's look at the range. Okay, let's look at the range. Let's erase this. Now for the range, I'm going to start at, let's see, where's my pen? Highlighter and highlighter. I'm going to go with this. Now for the range, we start with the lowest point of the graph. And the lowest point is right here. Now a lot of kids, they were putting 2 as the starting point. But remember, for the range, we must draw a line to the y-axis, right? To the y-axis. So it's not 2, it is 0. So make sure you don't make that mistake. 0 is the lowest y value on that graph. And of course, it's a solid line, so I'm going to use less than or equal to. But what is the highest point? Well, the highest point is right here on this line, right? It's not an arrow. It's just this point, this line right here. And to find the y value, right, I'm just going to come across, again, to the y-axis, all right? And that's going to be 4. And again, this is a line, so I'm going to use less than or equal to, and I put y, okay, as my range, all right? Okay, what else do we have? Did I miss? What else did I miss? Let's see. We did this one. Okay, this one I did in class because I know. Okay, let me erase this for a second. Go over this one real quick. Here we have an arrow pointing upwards, right? We want to find a domain. How do we do that now? Remember, domain is where the graph starts on the left and where it ends on the right. Remember, domain is where the graph starts on the left and ends on the right. But this line, there, it doesn't go to the left or to the right. It's at 2. All right? So the domain is just 2. The range now, again, we're going to start at the bottom. Okay, we're going to start at the bottom. And so the lowest point is here. I come across, that is -4. All right? It's a closed circle, so I'm going to use less than or equal to. Let's go to the top now. Is there a highest point on this graph? Not really. It's an arrow. Don't assume this is 5. An arrow just means that the line keeps on going. So it goes to positive infinity. And again, we use the less than with that. Okay. Now another way, I'll put an X right. I'll put a Y right there. Now another way of writing this this range is we can look at it. Look at this graph right here. See, there are no values below -4. There's none. Everything is above -4. So all my y values. So I can say now that my range is going to be y. All the y values are greater than or equal to -4. All right. So that's another way of writing that. All the y values that are greater than or equal to -4 because we have to include -4, and they all go up that way. All right. All right. Next one I want to these last two one I want to get to. Um, number 5. Again, what is a domain? Again, remember we start on the left side where the graph starts at. So highlighter. So the graph starts right here. I come down to my x-axis. That's going to be -3. Let me scoot a little bit. All right. So that's going to be -3 over here. Now, where does the graph ends? Well, it ends right here. And so if I go to the x-axis, that's just 2. And so I'll put 2 right here. Now this is an open circle, so I'm put less than. For where it starts at -3, it's a closed circle, so I put less than or equal to. And I put x right there. All right. Now the range now, we must find the lowest point on the graph. The lowest point on the graph is going to be this point right here, which is -7. -7, come on, -7. And because that's a line, I saw the line, so I'm going to use less than or equal to. No, that's the lowest point. Now the highest point is going to be this point right here, all right here. And remember, you'll have to go to the y-axis to find the value, and that is 2. And that's a closed circle too, so I'm going to use less than or equal to. And I put a y right there. So my range is going to be from -7 to 2. All right. Okay. And then the last one here. Again, so some of these things, it just follow the principle. Find where the graph starts at, where the graph ends, the lowest point to the highest point. All right. So okay, domain. Again, somebody just pause the video and try to solve this, guys. All right, highlighter. Where does the graph start at for my domain? Well, it starts right here. And what is the x value right there? 0, all right? So that's going to be 0 right there. All right, it's a closed circle, so it's going to be less than or equal to. Okay, where does the graph? Okay, that's where the graph starts at. Where does the graph ends? Well, if I go over, right, it's an arrow, so the graph never really ends. So it's going to positive infinity. So I'm going to use less than right there. And so that's my x in the middle. Another way of writing this, I can say that since all the x values of this graph, all the x values are going this way, right? They're all going that way. There's none back here. I can say that x is greater than or equal to 0. So that's another way of writing the domain. And then the range, all right, I'm going to start with the lowest point on the graph. The lowest point. Where's the lowest point on this graph? Well, you think it's going to be here, but not really. It doesn't have a low point. It keeps on going, right? So there's no low point. So it goes to negative infinity. So my low point is going to be negative infinity, and then we use less than. And what's my highest point? Well, my highest point on the graph is going to be right here. All right, so it's going to be 0. It's going to be 0, and it's a closed circle there, so I put less than or equal to. All right. So I can write this now since another way of writing the range now, since all the y values, right, are going down. All y values are going down, right? I can say that my range, I didn't put a y here, I'm sorry. This is a y right here. Another way of writing this, I can say that the range is all the y values, right, that are less than, sorry, less than or equal to 0, because all the y values starts at 0, right, and they all go down. So everything is less than or equal to 0. It's another way of writing the range. All right. Okay. I think that was all the questions, guys. Just watch the video. Um, I'm going to try find some more examples with answers. Oh, you know what? Too, I'm going to delta math. I'm going to make some put some more review for you guys on delta math. It has some great examples there. You guys can check out. Okay. So, all right. Good luck tomorrow in the quiz.